Everything just changed for the Winnipeg Jets. A new report has been published in The Athletic, written by Luszczyszyn, their resident statman, where he discusses and ranks every single NHL team based on most improved this offseason. Here at Jets Digest, we're obviously going to be talking about where the Winnipeg Jets place on this list. Is their placement warranted? And how do we think the former President's Trophy team is going to fare in this next upcoming season? Before we do hop into the video here, I couldn't help but notice it looks like in the past 28 days, about 85.7% of people watching the videos here on Jets Digest have not subscribed to the channel. I'd highly suggest you throw a subscription. We're going to be talking Jets all throughout the offseason and as we get into the new season. So let's hop into the video here. Of course, talking about the article written by Luszczyszyn, their stat man. Which NHL teams improved the most this offseason, ranking all 32 teams. And before we get into this, I just want to give credence to Luszczyszyn. I think that this guy's pretty smart. He has a model for the NHL that has performed very well in the past few seasons. So I think that his opinion here is definitely warranted. And the placement for the Winnipeg Jets, unfortunately, we do have to scroll all the way down to 30th on the list. Yes, third last on the list, only behind, the Toronto Maple Leafs and the LA Kings, is the Winnipeg Jets. And the reason for this here, he cites, the players coming in are, of course, Gustav Nyquist, Jonathan Toews, Tanner Pearson. Going out, Nikolai Ehlers, Mason Appleton, and Brandon Tanev. He starts off his little, opinion here where he just straight up says to Winnipeg Jets fans, says, hey, if it makes you feel any better, the prior year, the Jets ended up around this placement on the list. The reason for that was because they weren't able to retain the UFAs that they had traded for at the trade deadline the year previous. Of course, we're talking Sean Monahan, we're talking Tyler Toffoli. But the most important thing, the reason why this season they rank so low is the loss of Nikolai Ehlers. And of course, his replacement, I don't think it's exactly a replacement, but the people coming in to try and make up for his loss is going to be, obviously, Gustav Nyquist and Jonathan Toews. So let's dive into just Gustav Nyquist and Nikolai Ehlers to start off with. We can take a look at a comparison between their stats. This is over the past 3 years, and this is at even strength. The reason we are looking at only even strength metrics, power play time varies, team to team. It wouldn't be fair to compare a guy who maybe gets more power play time than the other. And in general, 90%, 95% of the game is played at even strength. So I think this is the best view to take a look at these stats. So over the past 3 years, you can see here that Gustav Nyquist has about 15 more games played as well as more time on ice. And despite that, it looks like Nikolai Ehlers has twice as many goals, more assists, more first assists, more second assists for a total of around 30 or so more points, 29 to be exact, than Gustav Nyquist in the past 3 seasons. Now, is this cause for concern? Yes and no. The first thing I want to mention here is that Gustav Nyquist is getting pretty old. He's 35 years old, turning 36 next year. At one point in his career, he was a speedy winger and a scorer. At this point, he's a middle six scorer. And it's definitely something that we should be maybe concerned about. However, there is also reason to hope that he will turn it around. This past year, he had an abysmal year with the Nashville Predators, and the Nashville Predators as a whole were just a tire fire. They were a team that were expected to do a lot better, having signed Steven Stamkos, during the offseason, and coming into this year, they were terrible and horrible. So I don't think that we should, I think we should maybe discredit the year from Gustav Nyquist on this team because sometimes bad teams just produce bad results for their players. However, the only other thing is we also need to consider the aging curve. It is pretty standard to go down as you as you age and get older and older. It is normal for production of players to go down. However, just the season prior to this Nashville bad season, he had about 73 points in 82 games. So, there is at least a very recent season where he has done very well scoring wise. So potentially he could make up for Ehlers' loss. We can take a look at their advanced stats here. This is comparing their J Fresh charts. If you've never seen these before, we bring them up on the channel often. Quick little thing. Blue is good. Red is bad. If you see a percentage, that's where the player ranks in the league. So the main thing I want to take a look here, obviously Nikolai Ehlers is at a star level. I know a lot of people, debate this player as a whole. How effective is he? He's too small. He loses the puck a lot. But numbers don't lie. And This guy produces a lot at even strength. He's good on the power play. He finishes a lot. He's decent defensively. And my main thing is that, maybe those defensive numbers don't look great, but at the same time, he's a player who, if he gets the puck on his stick, can skate the puck out and, keep control of it. And, one of the best transition players in the league. So losing him will definitely have an effect on the Jets. They will obviously be a slower team this next year. And we look at Gustav Nyquist, a player who's going to be, making up for it. And again, these numbers are over the past 3 years. So this does keep in mind the, bad season that Nyquist had with the Predators this past year. But he produces, decently, I would say about as, average, even strength offense wise. He's very bad defensively, which is tough. He'll likely be playing with either Adam Lowry or Jonathan Toews, obviously once Lowry is healthy. So, and the Winnipeg Jets also are a, defense first team they always talk about. So who knows, maybe that number could go up coming into a new system. He's all right at finishing. He plays pretty, against pretty hard competition, having almost an 80% there. So, this is a guy who I have high hopes that he'll be able to come in here and produce and try to make up for what we're losing with Nikolai Ehlers' departure. But, it's fair to be skeptical about this. It's fair to write an article and mention this as one of the key reasons why the Jets are going to take a step back next year. Again, we can also move over to the hometown boy, Manitoba boy, Jonathan Toews coming home finally. It's a great story. I wasn't here on the Jets Digest channel when this signing was announced, so I haven't really given my full opinion on it. First of all, I just want to say it's a great story. As a whole in Winnipeg, we always hear the story about, players not wanting to play here. It's difficult to get players to come home. We never get our John Tavares story, guy, in his Leafs pajamas coming home to play. But finally, we do get a guy to come home and play with us. And, a player like Jonathan Toews with his, his history in the league, having won so many Stanley Cups, playing for Team Canada. This is a guy who has a lot of leadership that he can bring. However, the big concern comes when you see the end of this little chart here where it shows his, his projected WAR rank. He was a top line player, a great player, a star in this league for a long time. However, near the end of it, it did start to dip down, as many players do as they age. And unfortunately, we don't have any data to show, because he has not played in the last 2 years since, the 22-23 season. But he's 37 now, and it's fair to assume that this guy might not be what the Jets are penciling him in as. And the Jets are penciling him in as a second-line center. Sure, maybe, hopefully, here's the thing. I'm hoping for this to work out. Again, it's a great story. But at the same time, I would look at him closer to being, a third, fourth line center than a second line center. Who knows? Maybe that, drop off near the end there has to do with him having long COVID. Of course, now we hear all the stories. Jonathan Toews is a worker. He's a grinder. He wouldn't come back if he wasn't ready to do so. So I'm ready to be, what's the word? I'm ready to be proved wrong. I would be very happy to show, to have him come in here and be a force, be a guy who can definitely take a hold of that second line center, make sure that Adam Lowry can play in that third line role. I think it would definitely do a lot for the Jets' depth. We can also take a look at another key departure that the Jets had here. We're talking, of course, we're not going to look at that yet. Mason Appleton. This is a player who kind of wore the bullhorns for the Jets for a while. I could tell that near the end of his stint here with us, fans were getting kind of frustrated with this player. Having always played so much. He always played a lot more because he was on Adam Lowry's line, and that line usually gets used more as like a second line than a third line here, and the second line with a guy like Ehlers on it. People who are a big fan of his would always point to Mason Appleton as a guy who going, why is this guy getting more ice time? But I think it more had to do with the role that he was playing, going out, playing against the other team's top lines. You can see he's pretty decent at generating offense. Was surprisingly not that great defensively, but I think that has to do with obviously playing against other teams' top lines. It's hard to be great defensively when you're going out against Nathan McKinnon, Jason Robertson. I guess he was injured, but you know what I mean. The point is, when you're playing against the other team's top lines, it's difficult to be fantastic defensively, but he would go out there, play his role, do what he needed to do. And I think where people were getting frustrated with him, I think most Jets fans can think of a Mason Appleton moment where, he had a wide open net and missed it. But I mean, that happens for every player. I just think that this guy kind of culminated in frustration for the Winnipeg Jets fans because of, just being cast into a role where maybe it's a little bit too high up in the lineup than he was supposed to be. Letting him walk was the right choice, salary cap wise. And in my opinion, there are other players who can come in and play this Mason Appleton role. I'm going to point over to, you may have seen it before, Nikita Chibrikov, a guy who on the Manitoba Moose, he has played a couple games with the Winnipeg Jets, I think 5 or so now. He's scored in his first game in the NHL, and since then, I think he played 4 games last year, and he had about 3 points. So if we look at his Moose numbers, he played 30 games, played 18 points. That may not jump off the page to you. However, I want you to consider that the Manitoba Moose were abysmal, terrible this last year. Their highest scorer had 37 points. I think it was Mason Shaw. They couldn't generate offense, so I wouldn't pin that on him. Definitely not the case. We can take a look even at his highlights here. This is his first NHL goal. I just wanted to show this. Take a look at this tenacity going in, taking away the passing option, getting the puck from Demko, fighting off a premier defenseman in Quinn Hughes, getting the puck down low to Nino, finding the open space, and boom, back of the net. This is a player who has, I think, the grinding aspects that could fill that Mason Appleton role. But also has the skill. For a while, I've really wanted to see Adam Lowry play with more skilled players. I like when they added Nino to that line, not last year, but the year before. It gave Adam Lowry, a player, if he's going to be playing in that top 6, if he's going to be playing second line center, I think he needs to play with more skillful players. And I think that Nikita Chibrikov is a guy who could make the jump this year. I'm really, really excited for what this guy can do with the Jets. On top of that, you do also have the addition of Cole Koepke, a guy who will be playing in the bottom 6 for the Winnipeg Jets. Very good defensively, whatever offensively, doesn't score a lot of points. This guy is going to be probably a PK guy, despite the fact that he hasn't played PK, and is just going to be relied upon to kind of hold it together in that bottom 6. We also have the addition of Tanner Pearson, a player who's kind of been, at the end of his age curve, is not really the player that he once was, unfortunately. However, he will have some leadership and a lot of aspects that he can bring to the lineup, especially if the Winnipeg Jets go for a younger lineup with players who are looking to capitalize on their potential. It would be the way that I would go if I were the coach. But of course, we'll wait till we get to training camp and see how these players do. And I just want to finally end it off here by just looking at the roster. This is just on Puckpedia. You'll notice, obviously, Velarde doesn't have his contract in there. I took the screenshot yesterday. My apologies. Or just the other day. My apologies. The one thing I would just say is, you could probably switch around a couple players in that middle 6. I would expect to see Niederreiter, Toews, and maybe Nyquist. I would expect especially Perfetti to be playing with Nemestikov and Iafallo. I think that they'll want to keep Nemestikov and Perfetti together. They have a lot of chemistry together and have played together for a while now. The players in the bottom 6 will obviously change. It depends on who, makes an impression at training camp. They have the Winnipeg Jets have a lot of depth, a lot of players who can play in that bottom 6 role. And then when we look at the defense side of things, pretty standard what we're used to. I would expect Luszczyszyn probably to be moved, maybe Logan Stanley. One of these players definitely makes the other redundant. They kind of fill the same type of role. And I think that another team would find Luszczyszyn a valuable player and would want him on their roster. Regardless, someone is going to have to go through waivers. So I would say probably a trade at some point will be imminent there. And then, of course, you do have Connor Hellebuyck. And I'll end this off here by just projecting where I see this Jets lineup finishing. I think that they're still a playoff team. It's pretty hard to miss playoffs when you have the best goalie in the world in Connor Hellebuyck. We're not going to talk about the playoffs, of course. That was a whole other thing. And top-end talent like Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. However, I think that they are not contenders this year. I don't think they're going to be the President's Trophy winning team that they were last year. And unless, someone steps into this lineup and really makes an impact, if one of the young guys can come into training camp and show that they're ready to go, or if the Winnipeg Jets make some sort of trade that brings a little bit more talent to their middle 6, I expect them to be, still a playoff team, but maybe on the lower end of that, maybe 3rd spot in the Central. I think it's going to be tough to compete with Dallas and Colorado this year. But alas, that's my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. Throw your comment down. Let me know if I'm a dumb schmuck who knows nothing, or if you think that I'm not too off base here. Let me know what you think and where you think the Winnipeg Jets are going to end up. And of course, please throw a like on the video here. We're covering the Jets all throughout the offseason. And every time that you like the video, it definitely helps us out in the algorithm. So have yourself a wonderful summer. I'll be here breaking it all down on Jets Digest. Thank you so much.